morning, and it's time to get up with CP3. Still in OKC, and it doesn't appear that's going to change anytime soon. How does this end for the future Hall of Famer and when? Plus, Tua Tagovailoa said something yesterday that had everybody losing their minds, except what he said was absolutely right. You'll hear it, and you'll make up your own mind. And young, brash stars, talking the talk, walking the walk. Are these two ready to lead the Browns to the big game, or do we need to slow down on all this chatter? Answers to those and other questions as we get up with you this morning live from New York. So glad you've chosen to get up this morning with us. Jalen is ready to go. Dan is here. Dominique Foxworth has made the 15-foot walk.
It's a new blazer.
Take over here.
It is. That's the first time he wore that one. I just copped it yesterday. I was bored.
Hey,
who has better hair between these guys?
It's not a conversation.
I mean, Jalen, you win. You just called it out because that shape of stay sharp. Man, look at these guys.
I appreciate that you're humoring them with the question. We obviously know what the answer is. Meanwhile, let's start with a superstar, Chris Paul. Sources telling our Adrian Wojnarowski that trade talks for the 9-time All-Star have stalled, and it is increasingly likely, Jalen, that CP3 at least begins the next season with the Thunder. According to Woj, Sam Presti, the GM, is not interested in surrendering draft picks to sweeten a deal. As a result, we are likely going to see Chris Paul play for OKC next year. And here's some opinion from Woj. He writes, Sam Presti welcomes the idea of Paul playing for his franchise this season, and Paul has warmed to the idea of the Thunder as a landing spot for the year based on the organization and a competitive talent level. Competitive, I guess, is the operative word. They're not going to be a terrible team. They're not a tanking team. They're not a team we figure will be, competing for the worst record in the league. But they're certainly not a contender of any consequence. So what will it mean for a guy like CP3 at this stage of his career to be there?
CP3, don't panic. Don't give him a discount. This is all noise. You and I both know when the season starts, they much rather have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as their starting point guard so they can develop and see if he can be that player for them in the future. These are what we consider smoke and mirrors. Anytime you move Russell Westbrook in his deal, of course it's going to be time to take a deep breath as a franchise. They moved Paul George in 72 hours. They moved Russell Westbrook in a week. They're not going to just jump up and move Chris Paul like that. They have to recalibrate. So for a team that Presti says, welcome CP3, of course they do. He's under contract. Of course CP3 is warming to the idea of anybody's going to give me $120 million.
Right.
Okay, so ultimately, though, I think a deal will get done, but I agree, it probably won't happen before the start of the season.
We were at Orlovsky and I did SportsCenter right before we came on here, and I saw some of the numbers they put up on Chris Paul as we were getting ready to come on. He had career lows in basically everything last year. So my question to you, if and when he does eventually get traded out of Oklahoma City to a contender, which I think we both think eventually he will, is he still that? Is he still a guy who can be a central piece, not the best player, but a central piece on a potential championship team?
I think so. Chris Paul is not going to be Steph Curry, Dame Lillard type of productivity, Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker. But on a nightly basis, he can play just as well as certain all-stars throughout the league. Now, big guys, we don't think twice about them playing into their mid-30s. So when Al Horford gets a 4-year, $100 million deal, we don't think twice. Or Marc Gasol opts back in for $25 million. But think about guys like J.J. Redick, Kyle Korver, who are shooters. We see them as guys that can play into their mid-30s. But CP3 doesn't wow you with his athleticism, Greeny. He's a smart player. He's a defender. He's going to make good decisions with the ball. There's always a place for a guy like that when he's healthy.
Yeah, and a guy who plays with the ball in his hands is probably not ideally suited to play alongside James Harden. So we probably haven't seen the best of what Chris Paul still has left in the last couple of years. One way or another, Paul on OKC long-term doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Let's pivot then to the Celtics and a point guard move that makes a lot of sense. Boston pivoted from Kyrie Irving to Kemba Walker. He gets a 4-year, $141 million max contract, and he was introduced in Boston yesterday talking about the decision to move on from Charlotte, the only NBA team he has ever known.
I would definitely say it was one of the hardest decisions of my life. Charlotte's all I know. I've gave that organization everything I've had, every single night. My time was up there. I'm ready to start a new chapter, especially here with the Celtics. It's a winning organization, and I want to win. That's what I'm about. Throughout my basketball career and as a pro, I haven't won consistently, and I just want to get a taste of that.
We got done with the draft and we started our preparation for free agency as we started planning for Plan A. Our Plan A was Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter.
And there's another example of what you say after you sign Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter. Having said that, here's what I want you to do. Let's educate basketball fans out there, because let's face it, Kemba Walker led Connecticut to a championship on the college level, got drafted by Charlotte, and most fans haven't seen him since. We know he puts up good numbers. We know he's a good player, but he's been on bad teams his entire career. Just how good is Kemba Walker?
I think Kemba Walker is now going to introduce himself to the masses as one of the top players in the game at his position. He's been a 20-plus point scorer. He's led Charlotte to the playoffs. He's been an all-NBA player. He could get his own shot off the dribble. He could put you on skates as well as anybody in the league, whether it's making a three-point shot, a mid-range shot. He could finish at the hoop. His percentages are going to go up from three and from the field now that he's playing with better players around him. Now the Boston Celtics have the best collection of perimeter players in the Eastern Conference. You have Kemba. You're going to have second year off of injury in Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart. No team in the East can boast those five players that are going to be as productive. I think the level of sacrifices that he's going to be willing to make to allow those guys to elevate, not only on the floor, just attitude and psychologically is going to allow those guys to flourish. The Boston Celtics are going to surprise a lot of people this year.
I totally agree. They're not going to surprise me. You know me. I've been saying since this happened, I think that they get better as a result of it. Here's the one thing I do worry about. What is the difference, Jalen Rose, between being a star player on a bad team that gets no attention versus now being the central figure on a team like the Boston Celtics that does have high expectations?
Everything matters. And Kemba said it. I want to win. I gave the organization everything I had. He didn't say the organization did the same thing in reverse. So now that he plays for the Boston Celtics, each play is magnified. Each shot, each turnover, each game is going to be on national TV. It's a bigger stage. And this is what he's actually ready for. It's the opposite of what I said about Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham got a chance to get the shine in New York and become a celebrity without winning. Kemba Walker was nondescript in Charlotte, playing great basketball, but not necessarily on the big stage. Now he gets to bring the same exact statistics, basically, as Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics, and now he's going to garner a level of appreciation.
So as we sit here this minute, you're going to break down your 8 Eastern Conference playoff teams a little later, but as we sit here this minute, how many teams in the East are better than the Celtics? I'm looking at Philly, Toronto, Milwaukee, Indiana. How many of those teams are better than the Celtics?
A grand total of 1. The Milwaukee Bucks are the only team in the East that's going to have a better regular season record than the Boston
Including
Celtics.
Philly.
Including Philly.
Okay. Well, Jalen's going to get a little more deeply into that as the morning continues. He will give you the 8 Eastern Conference playoff teams. I look forward to seeing where Brooklyn winds up on that list. Being official, Thunder general manager Sam Presti called Russell Westbrook the most important player in Thunder history. That deal is official as of yesterday. Meanwhile, the coach of the Rockets, Mike D'Antoni, was on the Woj podcast talking about how Westbrook and James Harden will fit together.
James is a horse. And now, the second superstar you add is a horse. And you just try to match it up and try to get the best and then play the way that we need to play to be the best. And our offense, and it's funny, BYU, they got to change their offense. Well, it's been the number 1 or 2.
Right.
Golden State's the best ever. And we're right behind them.
Right.
And actually, from mid-November on, we were 1 point better offensively efficient than any team in the league. So we're not changing much. We'll tweak it. But to say you got to change, you can't win that way, that's BS.
All right, so I'm really interested to hear what Ryan says about that. You take a look here at the Rockets' win projection according to 538. They are projected to finish first in the Western Conference with 58 wins. Jalen predicted that as well when he went through his projections a little while ago. But there's a big difference, and Ryan, this is what I want to get to, between what works in the regular season, and I hear what D'Antoni is saying, oh, we're second in offense, oh, it's BS, that doesn't work. It does work in the regular season, but we see it time and again. You let a team prepare for you every single night, and in a best of 7, it doesn't seem to work. Can it with these two guys?
It's not impossible, okay? And for this not working so far, it was so close 2 years ago when so many basketball minds were saying the Warriors were unbeatable, it can't happen. They're up 3-2. Chris Paul has a hamstring injury. Like, that was real. To me, that season's an A. It worked. But as far as the regular season versus the playoff season, I believe right now there has never been a bigger gap between regular season basketball and playoff basketball. So when you, Jalen, have Houston as the 1 seed, I don't think you or I think Houston's the best team in the West. I could put 3 or 4 teams ahead of them. I could see them being the 1 seed because their approach to the regular season just wears you out. It's so hard to defend every single night. But then once it becomes the playoffs, clearly teams become more comfortable, as you're saying, Greeny, in that shorter amount of time. And we haven't had enough data on this, but right now, playoff basketball is so different from some of these analytic-driven teams during the regular season.
The number one thing that's different from playoff basketball to regular season basketball is the officiating. In the regular season, those bumps get called. Those reaches get called. In the postseason, they don't. So a lot of times you see James Harden leading the league in free throws made and attempted in the regular season. You see him looking at the refs for a call in the postseason. For Mike D'Antoni, here's what needs to change. He has 2 guards that while they're really good at operating in isolating situations, he needs to have Russ working in the mid-post a little more. That's what needs to change. Mike D'Antoni offenses, Greeny, they never allow players to post up. It's always facing the basket. Russell Westbrook's game ain't standing behind the three-point line and launching 7 threes a game. That's not playing to his strength. That has to change.
2 things. One, your comparison on the officiating is fascinating to me. I hadn't thought of it that way, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
No, you'll see these peaks and valleys all the time with Harden's.
But second, let's transpose it then to the postseason. If I told you right now, make a list of all the teams that you could see winning the championship this year. You have Houston number 1 in the regular season.
Correct.
Here's the teams that could win the title. Would you put the Rockets on it?
Yeah, they're amongst the 6 or 7 teams.
They're in it. You could see them winning it.
Yes. Here's why. Because they're going to go so hard for the regular season. I guarantee you, Russ and James Harden look at each other and be like, let's try to play all 82 games. So now, if we have home court advantage, that gives us a legitimate chance, like 2 years ago you just described.
And 2 years ago, they did an awesome job. For all the concern, Paul, Harden, they stagger those minutes.
That's all you do.
And you're watching it, you're going, man, like they just split them up the whole time, except the start and the very end. They're going to do that in the regular season, and it's going to look awesome at times.
They'll play 6 or 8 minutes to start the game, first and third quarter, and then they'll play the last 4 or 5 minutes together. Other than that, both of those guys will have their chances to be out there when the other one's getting ready.
And so maybe they'll be rested when they get to the postseason. Now, of course, they played together in Oklahoma City once upon a time, and they're